They say memories fade with time. But what if time wanted them back in an instant? Like a drop of water in an ocean that could be taken from you and lost without the knowledge to return them, or the hope they even still exist in that vast sea at all. Memories like the soft, cold caress of the stars against your skin, or the warm scent of your mother as she cuddled you close, gone in an instant as you plummet into nothingness. Down, down, down. Wind whipped past Irolahne's ears rapidly as she was caught in a free fall. At this altitude, there were only clouds to catch her as she fell, sinking through them like a rock through wet paper. Eyes cracking open only to gaze at the raindrops pouring in reverse, dark violet wings limply being drugged by the wind. Her head was a fog. Where was she? Who was she? What was she? The more she came to, the more she realized what was happening. A crack of lightning nearly grazed her, bringing her consciousness forward just as she broke through the clouds, with enough time for her to realize that she was indeed plummeting, perhaps to her death. Feeling as new as a freshly born babe taking their first breath, Irolahne gasped and wings shot out to either side of her instinctually, the rapid onslaught of air catching her off guard and pulling them upward. Panic began to set in, beginning to flap rain-soaked wings, now in a spiral, the smell of salt water striking her nostrils. Time began to count down her fate, second by second. It wasn't until an almost freezing updraft caught the membranes of her shaking wings that she slowed enough to ease her descent to a healthy fall. Darkness was all her adrenaline-racked mind could take in, but her ears picked up the sound of waves. The aforementioned smell of salt water grew stronger and stronger with every moment passed. With less time than she had hoped, the ocean was soon to claim her, the wind impossible to read in this monstrous storm, and so with no home to slow herself further, Irolahne went from air to water with a loud splash that was lost in the crashing sounds of the waves. Everything went black. Surely this was where her story ended. That was until new voices prodded at what felt like a wakeless slumber. At first, all she could make out were the garbling voices of creatures she had never heard before. Some deep, some light, some sounding cautious but assertive, and others full of fear, perhaps even with disdain. All she could really focus on was the throbbing of her head as she came in and out of consciousness once more. "Dragon," was one of the words she managed to catch. Is that me? She thought. She had a very vague idea of what a dragon was, and at this state in the game, she wasn't sure that's the description she fit. "A purple, this far out to sea." Another voice rang through a little clearer now. "Weirder things have happened. Looks young," said one. "It would fetch a nice price, probably better than the net of fish it was found in," said another. She began to stir. Her body ached so much that it felt aflame despite the cold that engulfed her. Only able to make out blurs of the group of bipedal creatures that surrounded her. "Good luck finding a merchant looking for an already hatched purple dragon at the port. We should kill it while it's still unconscious and be done with this mess," said one of them with the most intimidating voices she had ever heard. "I'm captain, and I'm choosing to try and make up for lost wages. Bind it, and make sure they've tight. Take it below and withhold food and water. It might not even live, look at it," said a lighter-voiced individual. The voices became garbled again when everything began to fade once more, giving into whatever fate had been laid out for her. After what seemed like many days, she finally came to, possibly in one of the most uncomfortable ways. A boot collided with her snout shortly after, opening her eyes, making them sting with tears. "Actually alive, are ye? Good. Stay down," hissed a burly-looking man with a scar that rippled across his left forearm. Even if Irolahne wanted to respond, she couldn't, with a tangle of ropes around her muzzle. Any limb that was free to move was shackled with heavy irons.
I know you're going to be more trouble than you're worth, but Cop says you can fetch a pretty coin alive. I have no trouble with making sure we get half as good if you're dead.
He scowled in her direction, and his ire made her uncomfortable. What reason did he have to be so aggressive? It made no sense to her, but she was in no position to argue. Irolahne had no sense of time. Being kept below deck, she could not see the sun nor feel the moon, purely going off the steep drops in temperature and taking guesses in the dark. And by her reckoning, she had been on this vessel for at least 3 days since being brought aboard. The crew members would occasionally take drunken pot shots at her with food, knowing that she couldn't open her mouth wide enough to eat it, and was too exhausted from her fall to lash out in any way. She could have easily been struck down if she tried. Irolahne laid facing the wall, trying to find any comfort in the solace of the rocking ship, when a soft clinking sound caught her attention. Lazily, she looked in the direction of the noise, and one of the younger deckhands that would come to stare at her pushed open the door to her cell. They held a plate of food of all kinds, though it looked half-eaten, mostly. Irolahne squinted and grumbled in warning. This one she wasn't afraid of, and surely they were here to torture her with more cruel actions. Shh, I'm not here to hurt you, if you don't hurt me, she whispered. Irolahne was skeptical, but ceased her growl. I'm sure you're hungry. Would you like some? Irolahne gave her another scowl as if she was convinced they were joking. Of course she'd like some. I'll have to put them back on afterwards, but if you let me, I'll take your ropes off long enough for you to eat. Just please don't eat me. The girl chuckled nervously, and in response, Irolahne nodded, and soon her snout was free of the strong and tight ropes that kept her from moving her jaw. Having been on her face so long, there were some uncomfortable marks that were left behind and that started to feel sore. Her jaw worked trying to feel the ability of free movement once more. My name's Jahara, she said, as she set the plate of half-eaten food down in front of her. Dragons can speak common, right? What's your name? Irolahne was suspicious of the food at first, but a sudden rumbling in her gut frantically pushed aside any skepticism in favor of not starving. It wasn't much, but enough to quell some of the stomach pains she had begun to feel. Jahara pulled out a water pouch and poured some into a wooden stein, offering it to her. Carefully, she'd drink from it, but she couldn't think to answer Jahara right away. What is my name? She pondered. It was a thought she hadn't really put much mind to in her hours of torment. It took her a little while, and from the dark of her memories, the only word she could actually bring forth was, Irolahne, she said out loud, the first time ever hearing her voice for herself. It was a weird experience. After introductions had been made, talk was short. The floorboards above began to stir with the sound of several stumbling individuals. The ropes were returned around her face again, much to her discomfort, before anyone could suspect anything. It's still early on, but I'll visit you again, the girl whispered. Hang in there, Irolahne. And she did, again and again, for several days. They talked about things Irolahne couldn't quite wrap her brain around. The fear of her, for instance. Jahara informed her of the dragons of the world and their many colors under the suns, as well as the history she had learned. Noting that some dragons were not as friendly as others, where some treasured materialistic gain, others relished in mortal suffering and destruction. But then there were those who sought knowledge over any physical gain known to man, from riddles to spells. And one spell in particular that interested Irolahne was the ability to disguise herself as anything she wanted, namely, one of Jahara's kind. What concerned her was exactly the distrust for dragons that looked a particular way because of their history with the smaller beings of this world, such as humans like Jahara, and how this was going to further seal her fate with her captors. She explained the sale of Dragon's How and how it was very unlikely anyone would want such a dangerous subspecies so late in its years. But Jahara wasn't without her own plans. In fact, once it was apparent Irolahne had regained most of her strength from the ration morsels she was given, Jahara shared her plans for Irolahne's escape. In the night as they passed along the shores of land to the next destination, Jahara would set Irolahne free, and she could swim to land before anyone noticed she was missing. "What about you?" Irolahne asked, when that night had come and her bindings finally removed in full, Jahara having worked the metal clasps apart by taking the joints and connecting them off. "They won't suspect a thing. And anyways, I owe a debt they'll just make my life harder at any port I want to make a living at if I leave now." It wasn't until now that Iro had realized that Jahara was probably her one and only friend she had in this world right now, and it pained her to leave. "Here." Jahara handed her a pack that seemed stuffed full, but light enough for her to carry. "It's got one of the smaller spare sails in it. That should be more than enough to cloak you when you get on land if you need it. You could pull off the look of a kobold really easily, I think." Jahara hugged Irolahne. It felt warm. It was probably the warmest Iro had felt since coming aboard this vessel. Much like everything, however, time decided to make short. It was time for her to leave before anyone could stop her, making it over the side of the ship just in time for the watch doing their rounds to notice she was no longer in her cell, sending the ship's crew into a panic. But by then they were sailing far away, and Irolahne had almost reached shore. For a couple days, the forests around Ferrum became her home, only because she was absolutely lost. Eventually stumbling upon the town itself after wandering aimlessly and lost in thought about what had all just happened in what felt like the first few days of her life, she wanted so bad to ask for answers, to seek out help, but knowing what she knew, she didn't belong anywhere, to her knowledge. Hiding in a dark alleyway and listening to the bustle of the town, Irolahne tried to pick out any information she could that would help her. It wasn't until a few passers-by talked about rumors of a professor at the local academy that knew a whole lot about dragons by personal life experience that she finally had a heading, and it could be under her nose this whole time. Maybe a dragon that she could possibly converse with. Surely they were kind if they were living among the many beings of this town without discourse. That night she finally unpacked the sail tarp that Jahara had given her in their farewell and draped it over her like an ill-fitting cloak, waiting till the cover of darkness and the town to settle before she made her way to the academy, albeit a little lost at first. Her heart locked in a grip of anxiety as she took those first few rasps on the door. So you are knocking on the door to the Merryguard Academy. It is alien to you. The tall wooden doors set atop a cobblestone pathway. It is nighttime, and as such, the darkness is only punctuated by the occasional flash of light from high tower windows. And to your left and right, there are pastures that look as though they've been cleanly grazed, whether by livestock or maybe tended to by people. As you knock on the door, you suddenly hear from inside, "All right, 1 minute." One moment here. There is a rumble as the door begins to slide open. You see standing before you is a dwarf. A short entity with very, very salt and pepper dabbered dark brown hair. His beard is pulled down into long beads that is kind of ornately braided. The dwarf is looking at you, and he says, "Hey, how can I help you?"
She's got the cloak tightly pulled, or the sail tightly pulled over her face, but just enough for her muzzle to poke through. She is standing on her hind legs, but she's really draped. She just looks like a ghost. I She's lost for words. Uh, do you, do you have a dragon here?
There's a pause as the dwarf looks at you, and he says, "Aye, we do."
Uh, I need to speak with them.
The dwarf looks confused, and he kind of gestures for you to come in. And he pulls the door open all the way, and he says,
Most people that come by just walk in. You're the first to knock, and well, it's been a long time.
and he kind of points to one of the benches. And as you enter this room, there is a large desk opposite the main doors that you have entered. And to your left and right, this wooden room is lined with portraits, these enormous paintings. Why don't you roll me a perception check, please?
She can't see with most of her face covered.
Yeah.
So she's a bit blind. And as she walks through, you can tell she's a bit clumsy as she's walking on her hind legs.
Sure. The dwarf, you watch as he steps up to the desk, and he picks up a box that he sets on the desk, and from it you see he picks up a blue stone that he holds up.
Hey, sorry to disturb you. I have a. What was your name again?
Irolahne.
I have a guest named Irolahne looking for an audience with Tabernacle.
You see the dwarf is waiting.
Can I ask what it is you need of him?
Aid. I need aid. Perhaps a little bit of insight.
They're here looking for help, and they're wearing a sail. Right.
I'll show her up. And he puts the blue stone down. And he kind of hops off the stool with a patter of his feet on the wooden floor. And he gestures for you to follow him.
She follows.
He goes down the right-hand passageway, and as he does, you see that these hallways are absolutely lined with doors. They are extremely close together, which seems a little odd to you. You can't quite place what's wrong with that, but he passes by them as if there is nothing to consider. Your blinders created from the cloak kind of make it hard to take in any details. Some of the doors clearly have labels on them. The first door that you cross says selections on it, which doesn't really mean anything to you, at least not at this first moment. He leads the way down the hallway, and it's a good maybe 80-foot walk until finally he gets to this door that's set into a rounded wall, and he opens it with, and you see there is a round staircase going up. And he says,
Are you all right? You look a little unsteady on your feet there.
I've been out at sea for a while.
Ah, right. Well, it's just up the stairs, so watch your step, and he begins to climb them.
She follows, though the stairs are a little awkward at first, so she leans on the wall as she walks.
Okay. Why don't you roll me just a straight dexterity roll? With how unfamiliar you are with this sort of motion. We'll see how well you pull it off.
That's 16?
That's a 19 plus 3.
Okay.
So you're unsteady, but you keep your footing and you move as quickly as you can, moving at half speed. You climb the steps behind this dwarf. Finally, the dwarf reaches the top floor, having passed one level where there was a ring of doors around it. He kept on past it until finally he reaches the top, and there is an ornately crafted door with an iridescent mosaic of what looks like magical writing, magical runes. You're not sure what they are. But as he stops, he says,
He'll be right near.
Okay. The door's open, right?
yeah.
Okay, she enters.
The first thing you see... One moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you see as you enter is an enormous library. Shelves and shelves of books and scrolls and tomes sit in front of you, and in the middle of the room is a long table. There are small scorch marks around corners of the table where it looks like perhaps people have made mistakes or spells have gone awry. You see a balcony on the far side of this library from you that seems to open up into a much larger cavern. What do you do?
Well, she's definitely gonna take a look at some of the books, with the best she can, with her face covered. She's
Okay.
a little curious.
Yeah, roll me D100.
Okay. Get out of my way. Okay.
The first book you look at is a wide tome on the first shelf you see. And it says, Adjurax Abjurations and Protections for the Personal Caster. And then next to that you see Abjuration Magic for the Beginner. And then Adoring Magics performed by, and etc., etc. It seems alphabetized. And you see that there is just book after book describing magic and various kinds, histories of them, different spells and their uses, etc. You hear footsteps climbing the steps behind you. And a woman in dark attire, very long black sleeves that go all the way down past her fingertips, a veil covering her face. This woman appears at the top of the steps and she says, "Ah, I'm sorry, I did not mean to be in your way. Tabernacle is just down the steps." And she proceeds past you.
When she sees this woman, she tightens the grasp around her her sail and nods, and then proceeds in the direction that she said Tabernacle was in.
Okay. As you head toward the balcony, you see there is a stairwell that she had just climbed. Looking down it, you see there is this large stage. In front of the stage is all sorts of fine seating. There's sofas and lounge chairs and an enormous hearth that is happily fluttering light into the room. It's comfortable in here. But on the enormous stage, there is a huge brass dragon. You see that this brass dragon his attentions are down at something on the stage, and you notice there is a broad scroll open, and a quill is magically dancing across the scroll as he appears to be writing. And as you're looking down, almost sensing maybe someone is looking at him, the brass dragon looks up with a massive head and says,
"Ah, you must be the stranger sent my way."
Yes. I have need of your knowledge.
Well, typically I reserve my services to students and contractors and clients and the like. However,
you see the quill is slowly set down, and these massive claws kind of clasp underneath the chin as it looks up at you. He says,
you do appear to be a special case. Why don't you come have a seat?
he's down a flight of stairs, right?
Yep.
Now she gets to figure out how to go downstairs,
Yes,
walking
you
onto
do.
the feet.
You get to roll me another dexterity check.
Okay.
The dice speaketh. You tumble down the stairs. You fall and roll the entire length of what must be 15 steps. You do end up taking a little bit of damage from falling down the stairs. You take 3 points of bludgeoning damage, and your pride is perhaps more injured. As you topple and stumble and roll down the stairs with a... And Tabernac looks over his claws at you and says,
You all right?
Do you think
Yeah.
you managed to keep the sail tight around you during that tumble?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I'm sure she got tangled up in it a little bit, but as she landed, it would have mostly fallen off. And as she rights herself, now on her typical stance of 4 legs, Tabernac will see that what appears to be a highly iridescent purple dragon stands before him.
Well, I can imagine that was a little bit embarrassing, but I will not tell anyone. Please have a seat, or a lounge or lay, however you like.
As he gestures to any of the various seating in his lair.
She, quite sore after such a tumble, she wobbles her way over, just in an appropriate proximity in front of him, and promptly sits down.
I am pleased to meet you. I am Tabernac the Spellweaver. And you are?
I am Irolahne, of just nothing, really.
Well, maybe when you're older you will pick a title for yourself. I am surprised to see a purple dragon here, above ground, in my lair. But it is likely you came with a purpose.
I did. I don't... Do you know how to change shape?
Well, of course I do.
I don't. I need to know how. Very hard traveling in this form.
Tabernac looks surprised. And he says,
You do not know how. It is instinctual for us. Do you not feel the memories feel the magic flowing through your bones?
That's just it. I don't remember anything. Barely remember my own name.
Aha. How extraordinary. Do you mind if I approach?
Sorry, my internet cut out.
I see that. Tabernac says,
Do you mind if I approach?
Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yes, you can. You can.
Tabernac rises up onto all 4 feet, and he is huge. It is an enormous creature. But as it steps forward, he into a person that steps down off the stage. And this is not the form you would expect a dragon to choose voluntarily. It is a slightly pudgy, kind of fair-skinned old man, balding in the head with spectacles on as he steps up. He's wearing long, brass-colored cloak and robes, with all sorts of small trinkets and devices hanging off of the cloak. And as he approaches, he says, "Most peculiar. You do... I can admit I do not have the most knowledge into purple dragons, but maybe we can sort you out, as it were. Now, Persh said you required aid. You needed my help. I see what he was talking about." And as he says that, he is pulling out a small lens, which suddenly flashes almost a violet color as he looks at you. And he says, "Tell me, what is your first memory?"
Just falling from the sky. I a storm, and then water.
Well, from what I hear, purple dragons generally dwell underground, as they are referred to as deep dragons. Exceedingly rare. Also the sort that are likely to partake in interactions with true Underdark dwellers, such as, Illithid, Drow, Svefneblin, these sorts of things. It is possible they were performing some magical experiment, and you are caught up in it and cast into the heavens. This is only conjecture, however. I have no clue as to how a deep dragon such as yourself had their memory erased and sent into the sky. But we will get to the bottom of it. First, the matter of restoring your instinctual abilities. I do require a service from you, however.
Anything. I just need your help. I'll do anything.
Well, I have every faith you are telling me the truth, as I can detect the confusion and turmoil in your thoughts. I believe you are being honest with me, which means you're in a situation I would not wish upon anyone. So, I will help you, but in return, you must help me.
How could I possibly help you?
We've never had another dragon here at the Merigard Academy. And you are young. Very young. I'd guess in your first century. As such, I would request you enlist in the Merigard Academy. You perform the duties that you would require of a student of the Merigard, and provide to me a report of how the classes are going from the perspective of one of my own kind. You can consider this a favor, as if it goes well for you, there are many other entities I would recommend education here through.
I mean, yeah, I could definitely, if the school will have me.
Oh, you'll not be telling anyone you're a dragon. We will first remedy your inability to change shape. But once we've done that, you will stay under the guise of a humanoid while you are here. Do you understand?
I understand.
It's entirely for the concerns of favoritism, and you know how it goes, right?
No.
Of course, you don't remember anything at all. As a dragon, going through the courses that a normal humanoid would be going through, you will have advantages, as your bloodline is uniquely attuned to coincide with the weave, or the material our magic is procured through. I suggest you perform as a sorcerer to both grow in your own abilities, but also to show just what it is a deep dragon can learn when influenced by a person teaching you. Amila Dawn is the instructor for sorcerers, and she is extremely capable. And I would love to see the potential a dragon might have when taught by an ancient elf. What do you say?
Her expression appears like she's almost a little disappointed that Tabernacle will not be the one teaching her, but after a few moments it fades. And she's hopeful that this will be a good start.
Perfect. So, first things first. We must... Well, I don't believe I can cure your pure amnesia, but I can, maybe, unlock the instinctual bit of you that allows you the basic ability to change form. All draconics are able to polymorph into a humanoid form, and that shape is up to you. And as such, he reaches forward and he touches 2 fingers to the top of your skull. He says, "Just relax, please." And I need you to make a charisma saving throw.
Oh wait, that's it. That no. Okay. Oh wow.
Tabernacle goes through your thoughts briefly. There's just a moment where he does sift through what you remember, and he sees the memories of the mistreatment. He sees your imprisonment aboard the ship, and you can feel a tension in his fingers as they're on your skull. You do not need to roll an insight check to tell that Tabernacle doesn't like that. That being said, he casts a spell, and you feel hungry. You feel curious. Where did all these things in his room come from? You feel almost this instinctual return of who you were at the basis self. You remember how to fly. You feel confused as to what you're being pulled down all the time. This gravity is unpleasant and uncomfortable, and you remember how to make yourself look like a human, or an elf, or a half-orc, or any other humanoid you want to. You remember how to. And Tabernacle says, "I feel awful that was how you were brought into this world for the second time. I understand if you would feel hatred or vengeance to these humans."
I kind of gathered that they're not all like that, but I think that's why I'm so scared. I don't know anymore.
Well, speaking from experience, if you wander the street as appearing as a dragon, most will be afraid of you. Most will not attack you. There'll be concern, many people running for the high hills in fear that you'll torch them, as people are not educated into our ways. Now, I realize as a deep dragon, you have the ability to... hold on. I may be getting my notes crossed. And he suddenly goes back up to the stage and says, "Please excuse me, I must re-research what it is a deep dragon is capable of. It's been a long time." And he, goes into one of the doors in the back of his stage and opens it up. What do you do while he's sifting for research material?
Kind of rattles her brain a little bit, because having her memory shifted through, although they were brief, definitely gave her brain some fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she watches him.
Okay. You
She's
no longer have the
very-
hood up.
yeah, no.
Go ahead and give me a perception check. Okay. Yeah, you see he's like magic. He has the door open, and one hand he has twisting and making gestures, and you see books sliding out and then returning as he's basically going, no, not that one. No, not quite. Where is it? I had, by an hour, I had the right tome for this. And it seems as though maybe his organization structure is failing him. You're not sure. But finally, he looks frustrated as he closes the door, and he says, well, my research papers that could have assisted me on identifying the principles of a deep dragon have been misplaced. So, we're going off my memory. If I recall, a deep dragon is capable of breathing a confusing effect, the sort that can make their enemies do silly things that they don't intend, instead of, say, stabbing you, that sort of thing. Whatever your abilities are, you are... Your camera's frozen, so I don't know what you're doing.
I'm sorry. One more time with that line.
He says, whenever your enemies would, say, attack you, or if you need to prevent them from stabbing you, you can breathe the heritage of the deep drake, which is a confusing breath, to make them do silly things, like not stabbing you. I'm not really sure what else there is. I'm afraid my memory fails me. But you would know in your practice as you grow, you would learn these innate abilities that you have. For example, I, as a brass dragon, can breathe extremely hot fire, and am resistant to it. So, it is very useful when I'm living in my native homeland of the desert, which this is not nearly as warm as, but I've grown accustomed to the cooler climate of Ferrum.
It is quite cold.
It's not so bad once you get used to it. It's just... I like to have the fire lit. Anyway. Here. And he twists his fingers, and a pouch appears. And he says, as part of your helping me, I will be sponsoring your tutelage here. Typically, the Marigot Academy requires a fund of 100 gold pieces to pay for a year of education. Because you are going to be going under the guise of my aid, I'll be paying for you, but it will look like you are paying for you.
Thank you. A lot, actually. I have no idea what the currency is of this area. Just seems very awkward.
You truly do not remember a thing. I'm surprised you can speak with me, honestly. Currency that we use is Aurelian in nature. I realize that word doesn't mean anything to you if you don't know what currency is. Copper, silver, electrum, gold. Those are the important ones. 10 copper to a silver, 10 silver to a gold. And he hands you a pouch of coin.
Takes it.
There are 115 gold pieces in that bag.
Where do I put this?
Well, when you have chosen a humanoid form, you can acquire such useful things as belt pouches and bags and satchels, the sorts of things that you can keep your belongings in. When you are not in a humanoid form,
You just hold it until you have a lair where you can store everything that matters to you.
He nods, understanding just a little bit. But when she thinks on that, she takes the small-ish backpack that Jahara gave her and just plops it in there.
Perfect. That will serve you well. So, tomorrow morning, I expect to see you come marching through the front door, planning to apply as a Merigard student.
Yes, absolutely.
Where were you staying, out of curiosity, before you came here?
Just outside of the what do you call them? The humanoids?
The,
Just
the humans.
just right outside. Yes, just right outside their constructs.
You were staying in the forest.
Yes. Yes, it's probably safer.
All right. The first question I have for you is, can you read?
No. I don't know what that is.
Right. Perfect. He holds up a tome, and you see it says the title on the tome, and he says, these words, do you recognize them? So you read the titles on the library, so you can read. You might not know what that word means, but
Right. They do form a word.
the title of the tome is just Amaranthan Almanac.
But the word has no meaning to her.
Right.
So
Tabernacle will say, right. I think perhaps it is best if we do this, maybe if I tutor you a little bit before we start you from scratch as a student. And Tabernacle invites you up onto the stage.
she obliges.
He goes farther back on the stage where there are various doors, and he opens one, and you see it is a study. Or at least at a glance, it's a study. There is a desk with a globe on it and various books around it, but then on the corner there is a small but comfortable-looking bed, and he says, I have used this room for clients in the past who required a place to hide. You are welcome to stay here for maybe a week, and I will help you get a grasp on the basics before we begin this plan. What do you think?
I don't think I have much choice, really.
You could say no and go attempt to make a living in the forest. The choice is yours. It's up to you. I don't want you to feel forced to stay here.
Not at all. I have no idea what's going on. I think this is probably the best place to start.
Well, it's always good to have a deep dragon owe you one. So, he gestures to the room and says, make yourself at home. Decide in a form for yourself, and I will get some basic books that will help you get a foundation for an education.
Do I just think about what I'm supposed to look like, or...
You think about it, you relax, and you let your body take the form of whatever you want.
Her face squints.
Oh, okay. Nope. You're already trying too hard. Let's maybe do the reading first, and then we can talk about a persona that you can take on.
Okay.
Perfect. And Tabernacle will leave for a moment as he kind of hesitantly watches you go into the room, looks back toward the books and says, I'll be right back. Don't
hurt yourself. And he goes to one of the shelves. What do you do?
Uh, she she she's gonna walk around and look at things a bit closer and see if she can just kind of take in everything around her.
Okay. This room is well furnished. The study is, as I've described, a desk with a comfortable chair, which doesn't really fit your anatomy. But you could easily stand near the desk and look through whatever is there. The bed is wide enough that you feel comfortable you could curl up on it in draconic form. Aside from that, there is a broad rug and a mosaic on the wall that appears to be depicting a human man with a very, very thick red beard, who has a sword that's just, he's holding it like this, and behind him is this massive, landscape, but full of people that are cheering. You don't know what this image is of, but it appears to be a hero of some kind. It is dominating one wall. The other wall looks like it has a frosted glass window that moonlight is casting into the room. It's a comfortable room.
Well, she's definitely gonna push on the cushions of the chair because that's interesting.
Okay, they're squishy and pliable.
But she also looks at the picture and she kind of feels like, kind of like a longing that people would accept her like that.
Do you inspect the image?
Yes.
Roll an investigation.
Ooh. Okay.
21. In the corner of the painting, you see the words Rowan Kailas, and then below it says the Unification. You see that the image shows this massive scape of people behind them, and you can see behind them is a mountain that is smoking. There is a harbor with various, what look like, well, to the meta-knowledge, they look like ancient style of boats. To you, they just look like boats. They don't mean anything to you.
Not at all.
But it's clearly a historical image of something important, something called the Unification.
What was the other thing that was in there?
The hero himself, a man with a very, very prominent red beard, with a longsword clasped in like the standing pose, hilt up in his hands, blade down to the ground, and he has a very cheeky smile on. His name, apparently, according to the painting, is Rowan Kailas.
And then what else is in the room?
There are shelves of books. There's a desk with a globe on it. There are various small little trinkets on the desk. There is a very broad bed. In the corner of the room, with a 21 investigation, you spot a spigot and a basin full of water, and various linens and cloth in that corner.
She's gonna check out the items on the desk and see if, well, not see anything. She's just being curious.
Okay. Let's see here. Hold on a second here. The first one you see is a small little pewter elf soldier armed with a shield and a longsword. And the base, when you look at the bottom of it, says 4 of 7. You see next to that is a unusual stringed instrument. It's this long. You see that it has keys on one side, and it has like a crank with a wheel underneath it.
She's gonna try. She doesn't quite understand that is what it's going to do, but she's gonna poke that crank a little bit.
You hear a as you turn
That
the crank
scares
a
her.
little. Okay, she discovers the hurdy-gurdy and is scared by it. You see that on the back of the chair there is a shawl that looks like it's made of extremely soft fur. It's like dark gray. It's very bristly. It looks like it'd be soft.
Well, she'll touch it definitely.
It
See
is
how soft it is.
exactly as soft as she would hope it to be. The claws kind of dig into the fur, and you can feel it like your fingers sink like an inch deep into this very soft shawl.
Her next instinct is to smell it.
It smells of pine and wolf.
What's a wolf?
Well, it
What is that
smells
smell?
of an animal, I guess. Uh, kind of this earthy, wild scent to it.
Ah, that smells weird. And then I think she is going to try and look at those books and see if any of the words might mean something to her. She knows now that if anything with the word dragon on it, perhaps she can find some information.
Okay. Roll another investigation for me.
5, 7.
Okay. Roll me a D100.
Okay.
42.
The meaning of life.
You see a book that says blatantly incorrect on the silliness of wizards.
I don't know if any of that would make sense to her,
Probably
but
not.
but she'll try to wiggle it out, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you can
Because
slide the
she
book
saw
out.
Tabernac do it. So it will fall to the ground.
Okay.
And whatever page it lands on, that's the one she's gonna read.
Yeah. Okay. You read about. You read about how masters of the arcane easily lose track of the fundamentals, and it appears to be roasting a wizard who made mistakes in trying to understand a basic spell and ended up setting himself on fire. Which some of the words might mean something, some of them don't. Perhaps you get the image of someone setting themselves on fire.
He does. And it feels unpleasant in her mind, even though at some part of her probably thinks he deserved it.
Okay, yeah, perhaps. And it is at this moment that Tabernac returns, and he has a small stack of books, and they seem much simpler at a glance. He comes back with the equivalent of fantasy children's books. And he says, "Oh, I see you've done some exploring. Perfect. These are the sort of tomes that I have seen and have used to educate those generally that have been blasted by a feeble mind spell. But in this case, I think they are perfect for the job. So," and he sets the books down, and immediately there are very simple words on the covers. There's lots of pictures, and Tabernac hands you the first one, and it's basically it's about a baker traveling from town to town, and he says, "I know for a fact you will be able to read this one."
She very awkwardly tries to open the book with her claw.
Mm-hmm. Tabernac very eagerly is watching, just yes, perfect, yes, exactly, from left to right.
What does she see, really?
It's like a picture book. And it's like an image of a human baker pouring flour into a bowl and baking a loaf of bread, and it's describing what he's doing in very, very simple terms. I would say if you roll me an intelligence check and you beat a 5, you understand what this page is telling you.
We get a natural 1.
You might. No?
Perfect. I get a dirty 20.
The book seems cleverly designed to get the points across, and you understand what it is it's trying to tell you.
The tip of her tail seems to be twitching from side to side, like she's having a decent time and enjoying reading this very simple book.
Okay. When Tabernac sees that you are absorbing the information, he perfect, yes. Oh, all right. If you require anything,
you can. I always have a supply of food right across the hall. You can always go get yourself something to eat. Otherwise, I need to get some rest. So, don't be afraid to wake me if you require aid. Otherwise, try and stay on the stage.
Okay. Okay.
Also, if anything glows green, don't touch it.
She kind of looks at him confused.
If anything does this, and he like prestidigitates a green glowing light, and he says, "Do not touch it. If it does this with the light, you see how it's shiny.
Yes.
If you touch it, you will explode, and that will be bad."
Her ear fins kind of like pinned together like, oh, whoa, okay.
Only on the stage. I can't speak for that anywhere else, but it is my security system. Don't fuck with it. Excuse me. Don't mess with it. Keep your claws to yourself. If it glows green, do not touch.
She doesn't blink at the profanity. She does not know what that word means. So she nods. She nods, knowing now not to touch any glowing green objects.
Perfect. I'm going to go sleep. Let me know if you need help.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
He closes the door, and he leaves you to your devices. So we don't have to. Okay, so we don't have to play this all out. For the next week or so, you are left to. Well, you're not left alone, but like your time is basically Tabernacle urges you to spend it trying to understand the world around you, looking at the globe and identifying the different places. He gives you like a basic understanding of where you are, what the world is like, what different countries are like, how people interact with each other. He basically gives you a child's education in 7 days, which you are an intelligent creature. You pick it up well enough.
Yes.
In the future, we will roll history checks to see if you did actually learn this from Tabernacle or a book, or if you remember it, whether it be from Tabernacle or your own studies. Because Tabernacle cannot teach you everything.
No.
But he will give an honest try to get you prepared enough to not die if you go out into the world.
She definitely thinks he knows everything. So.
Well, that's not good for his ego. He's a dragon. Anyway.
She is young, so she looks up to her adults. Anyways.
It's true. However, as we finish this session 0 of your character meeting Tabernacle, asking for his aid, and promising your basically allegiance to him to help him try out the Merigard Academy for Dragons, that's where we're going to stop.
That was fun.
Thank you for joining me, and as we start the new From Nothing Irolahne's story, I look forward to seeing where this goes. It's a very interesting start, and it definitely gets to build on some of the lore that I haven't gotten to touch before. So,
Gore.
what'd you think?
I loved it. I want more. I see why some other members kind of want extra sessions, because that was a lot of fun. And I was, as I had said before, very intimidated by doing a 1v1 because I'm not outgoing like Lorna is, and I'm not good at coming up with one-liners on a whim. I feel like playing a character that doesn't have much knowledge of anything is a great start for me to work my way into Amaranth. So, and you do a wonderful job at making it a well-rounded story without me having to try and my way through. So I really thank you for that.
Thank you for playing with me. All right. And on that note, I will stop the recording there. Thank you for listening, anybody who did.